everyone, I'm Nizzahon for the Aether Hub, and today is one of my favorite days of the year, Full Set Spoiler Day. All of Modern Masters 2017 was spoiled earlier this morning, and that means it's time for me to talk about the set in a limited context. In this video, I'm going to talk about my picks for the best commons and uncommons in each color. Commons and uncommons are incredibly important cards in Limited because obviously you have more of a chance at getting them than rares or mythics. So for each color, I'm going to discuss the 3 commons and uncommons that I feel are the best, and explain why, and discuss where exactly I'd be happy to pick up a particular card during the draft. Because this set is pretty heavy when it comes to gold cards, I will also discuss the best common and uncommon gold cards in this set that I think are so strong that they are first pickable despite the fact that they are gold. There is a ton of fixing in this set, so taking these cards isn't quite as risky as it usually is. Also, a quick disclaimer, keep in mind I haven't played with these cards in this specific format yet, none of us have, so my picks are all based on past experience in different formats. Also, if you want an even deeper analysis of the cards of Modern Masters 2017, I will be posting an archetype guide on my own channel later today where I will examine what each color pair in the format is trying to do. But for now, let's get started with the best commons and uncommons in white. I think the third best white common is Core Hookmaster. It was great last time around, and we have seen similar cards recently like Stitched Mangler and Frostlinks do pretty well. They're great cards in any aggressive deck, in this case an aggressive white deck, since you shut down your opponent's best blocker for a couple of attacks. You can also use them to help yourself survive a little bit longer, but these effects are always better if you're more aggressive because they stop 2 blocks and only stop 1 attack. What's more is this format is filled with ways to blink or flicker your creatures, so if you can trigger Core Hookmaster more than once, you're going to be in pretty great shape. All that good stuff about it aside, I wouldn't first pick the Hookmaster, though I would take it relatively early and be happy taking it around pick 6 or so. The second best white common is Pitfall Trap. It isn't a premium removal spell, it's a situational one, but it gets the job done. Paying 3 to kill your opponent's best attacker and only 1 mana if you're really lucky is pretty nice. However, the fact that it can't hit flyers weakens it a decent amount, since that is oftentimes the one creature your opponent will be attacking with, and otherwise you would be able to trigger the trap if it weren't a flying creature. However, white does not have any other even solid removal at common, so this is the best removal that white has, and because of that, it should be taken, like the Hookmaster, around pick 5 or 6. That said, I don't like the idea of playing more than one of these kinds of cards because of the fact that your opponent can play around it so well, and the more frequently they are playing around it, the worse the trap gets. The best white common is Gideon's Lawkeeper. Master Decoy is always a great card in Limited, and that's basically what the Lawkeeper gives you. Having the ability to tap down your opponent's best creature or blocker for an investment of only 1 white mana is excellent. The Lawkeeper does suffer from only having 1 toughness, meaning he doesn't block or attack well, and dies to most of the removal in the format. But I think that's okay because he's just so efficient at everything else he does. I would first pick the Lawkeeper in a pack devoid of any premium uncommons that were a bum rare and be pretty happy about it. Speaking of uncommons, let's move to those. White is pretty stacked at uncommon, so narrowing it down to just 3 was a little bit hard, but in the end I decided on these. All 3 of these uncommons are going to be first pickable. The third best white uncommon is, for me, Flickerwisp. In addition to being a 3-mana 3/1 flyer, which is already something that would be solid in Limited, the Flickerwisp is also insanely flexible. You can use its Enter the Battlefield ability to get your opponent's best blocker or attacker out of the way for the whole turn. You can even hit one of your opponent's lands if you want to screw them off a color for a turn. You can also use it on your own creatures with Enter the Battlefield abilities to get to use those abilities again, and as I mentioned already, white already wants to be abusing Enter the Battlefield abilities with flicker effects like this one, especially when paired with blue. As good as Flickerwisp is, though, there are 2 white cards I would take ahead of it. One of these is Lingering Souls, which is just insane. It's sort of a black-white gold card, but even if you don't manage to splash black, or have black as your second color, which you should absolutely aim for if you have Lingering Souls, it is a good card, giving you 2 1/1 spirit tokens, in a format that pushes white towards making creature tokens already, and that's a great thing to have. No surprise that the best white uncommon is Path to Exile. To some degree, Path is better and constructed than in Limited, since games are typically grindier in Limited, and giving an opponent an extra land can have a bigger impact because of that. But 1 mana to kill anything is still incredible. I do recommend, if you can, using this on your opponent's upkeep so that they at least don't get use of their new land right away, since it comes into play tapped. But yeah, Path is still the best white uncommon there is. Now let's look at red. Red has a lot of good commons, and a lot of good removal at common. In fact, all 3 of the cards here are removal spells. I think the third best red common is Thunderous Wrath. It costs 6 mana, which is pretty clunky, but this format looks to be the kind of format where 6 mana removal is still pretty good. It is at least instant speed and can dome players, making it a lot better. The thing that makes it really good though is that when you can cast it for 1 red mana as a miracle if you draw it. When you're doing that, the efficiency of this spell is insane. While it has its ups and downs, getting it stuck in your hand when you can't hit 6 mana is a real concern, I think it has enough upside to be the third best red common, and a card you're pretty happy to have in your red deck. That said, I don't think you should take it super early, but around the middle of a pack it would feel pretty good. The second best red common is Magma Jet. In the past, Magma Jet has been an uncommon, but they decided to downshift its rarity here, and that is great for red because Magma Jet is an incredibly efficient removal spell that can also dome the opponent, and Scry 2 is also a pretty big deal. Not quite equal to drawing a card, but pretty close to it. You could sort of think of it as draw 0.7 cards, and adding that to 2 damage is pretty great. Plenty of creatures in this format die to Magma Jet, and that's what makes it one of the best red commons. In a weak pack, Magma Jet is first pickable. The best red common, though, is Chandra's Outrage. At instant speed, the Outrage lets you pay 4 mana to do 4 to a creature while also hitting the opponent for 2. Doling out 6 damage for 4 mana is pretty good, especially at instant speed. I would be happy to start a draft by first picking Chandra's Outrage. It's that powerful. Now let's move to the uncommons. Red seems kind of like the reverse of white, which had stupid good uncommons and no super amazing commons. We just saw red has some great commons, but its uncommons, well, they're not quite as good, and I actually am not super interested in first picking any of them, which isn't so good. Most colors have a snap first pick uncommon in most formats, but not red here. Anyway, there's still some pretty good red uncommons out there, just none that I would take over the best red common, which is Chandra's Outrage. Now, I think the third best red uncommon is Skurzdag Cultist. A 4 mana 2/2 isn't great, but she can throw creatures at whatever she wants to do 2 damage. That's pretty solid, especially because red does 2 different things that go well with that. It makes creature tokens, and it has a bunch of cards with the Unearth mechanic. This means the Cultist will have a lot of ammunition in the right deck, but she's definitely a middle of the pack kind of card in your first pack. If you find yourself loaded with dragon fodders and creatures with Unearth after a pack or 2 though, she should move up in your pack order. At number 2, I have Pyrewild Shaman. A 3 mana 3/1 isn't very good, but this guy comes with a lot of extra value. He can be used as a combat trick to help save a creature thanks to the Blood Rush mechanic, and when a creature deals damage to your opponent, you can pay 3 mana to get him back. This means that if you have 5 mana at the turn you use his Blood Rush effect, you can sometimes just get him back right away. But being a 3/1 who just won't stay dead is also pretty solid on its own. I guess he actually works pretty well with our Cultists too. All that said, the Shaman isn't a card you should be taking early either, maybe around pick 6 or 7. The best red uncommon is pretty good, but I still wouldn't take it over the best red common, and that's Vithian Stinger. Creatures who can ping creatures or players are always amazing for value in Limited, and this is a format where there'll be lots of creature tokens floating around for him to kill. What's more is he has the Unearth mechanic, which is heavily supported by the black-red color pair. While most creatures with Unearth can come into play from the graveyard and really mess up your opponent, the Stinger's a little more subtle. He can come into play and finish a creature off who blocked in combat, do 1 damage to your opponent, or just kill an X1. He also works pretty well with Skurzdag Cultist and the other sacrifice effects around in black-red that support Unearth. Now let's move on to blue. Blue is a color that is pretty shallow on commons. The third best blue common is, I think, Wingcrafter. For 1 mana you get a 1/1, but what's really great about it is Soulbond, which allows you to give it and any creature you play, once the Wingcrafter's in play, flying whenever you play the new creature. I mean, Soulbond basically, it can only be attached to 1 creature at a time. You can read the reminder text there, but you can choose anytime you play a new creature to give it flying with the Wingcrafter, and that's pretty great. And because of that, it means that the Wingcrafter is the kind of card that's good no matter when you play it. If you play it early, you'll be swinging in the air pretty early, and if it is a late top deck, you can give your big creature flying. It does have the downside that your opponent can kill the crafter at instant speed, make your attacker lose flying, and then block it and kill it on the ground. But there's enough upside for me here to be happy to have a Wingcrafter or 2 in most of my blue decks, but I wouldn't take it super early. At number 2, I have Seagate Oracle. Blue seems to be a color capable of making the game last a long time, and a card like Seagate Oracle is great in a control deck. He provides you a reasonable blocker for 3 mana, while also giving you some pretty nice card selection and drawing you a card. This means he's another creature who's pretty good at any stage of the game. In the early going, he can help you hit a land drop while blocking your opponent's 2-power creatures, and in the later game, after you've flooded out, you can play him and dig for a card that can be cast right away. Both are situations I'm happy with, and remember blue, especially when paired with white, is pretty good at blinking creatures, and while the Oracle's ability isn't the greatest to abuse, it's better than nothing. It may just be my own dirtily playstyle, but I would be happy to pick up Seagate Oracle anytime after the 6th or 7th pick, and would be happy playing as many as 4 of them. The best blue common is, hands down, Mistraven. Efficient bounce creatures are very frequently one of the best blue commons, and that's no different here. Developing your board with an evasive creature who can actually sometimes just win you the game in the air while also slowing your opponent down is just awesome. The Raven benefits further from the fact that there are plenty of ways, as I've mentioned, to blink and flicker creatures in this format, especially in blue-white, so you can really get to abusing the Mistraven's trigger. The Raven, while certainly not an ideal first pick, can be first pickable in some weaker packs, though it is worth noting that the power level in Modern Masters 2017 is high enough that the Raven will less frequently be first pickable than last time we saw it. Now, let's look at Blue's uncommons. Blue has some pretty nice uncommons. I think the third best blue uncommon is Wall of Frost. I'm not usually super into walls, but 7 toughness for 3 mana is great, and this wall doesn't suffer quite as much from the problem that plagues most 0 power walls. Your opponent can usually still just swing with all their creatures against such a thing, and they can still do that against the Wall of Frost, but you can block their biggest creature and keep it tapped down for a while, and if they do, that means that the wall really screws up your opponent who is trying to kill you quickly. While not a first pick in the early going, if you find yourself in a blue control deck, you will play as many Walls of Frost as the table is willing to give you. The next best blue uncommon is a very powerful draw spell that fits well into any blue deck, but especially a control deck, and that is Opportunity. 6 mana is a lot, and generally if I'm spending 6 mana on something, it better have a big impact on the outcome of the game. While Opportunity does not impact the board directly, drawing you 4 cards is insane card advantage, and can go a long way towards turning the game around in your favor or helping you finish it off. It also happens to be an instant, making it worlds better because if you leave mana up, you can do a whole lot of other things like activated abilities or use the mana for other spells. I would be pretty happy to take Opportunity with my third pick or so, and in some packs it's even a decent first pick, and the kind of card that I think every blue deck would be happy to have at the top of their curve. The number 1 blue uncommon is something I'll always be happy to first pick though, and that is Wing Splicer. Quick aside on Splicers, they're all really good in this set, not only for the obvious reason that they're all super efficient and bring a golem into play. For example, Wing Splicer provides you with a 1/1 body and a 3/3 flying golem, but also because this format is loaded with payoffs and for creature tokens and enter the battlefield abilities, making them even better. This means that they fit into 2 different kinds of decks. The white uncommon Splicer, Master Splicer, didn't quite make my list because there were so many good white uncommons, but I think it is first pickable too, along with those 3 white uncommons. Anyway, so yeah, Wing Splicer is a first pickable card, and also the kind of card you should consider splashing if you find yourself wanting to use the populate mechanic. Now, let's move on to Black. Black has some pretty nice commons. The top 2 are very good, and the vast majority of the other Black commons are perfectly playable and comparable on their power level. Cards like Grixis Slave Driver and Vampire Aristocrat were at one time what I was considering the third best, but after some thinking I ended up going with Pit Keeper. Pit Keeper does something I've already mentioned a few times in this video. He's good at multiple stages of the game. As a 2-drop, he provides you an early source of damage or a way to trade with your opponent's 2 toughness creature. In the late game, he stands a good chance of returning a creature card from your graveyard to your hand, especially since Black has some ways to stock the graveyard. In the late game, that ability is huge, and getting back one of your guys can go a long way towards turning a game around or helping you finish off your opponent. That said, I don't think the Pit Keeper holds a large edge over the cards I mentioned, Vampire Aristocrat and Grixis Slave Driver, and I could see either of them ending up as the third best Black common in the end. None of them are commons I would take particularly early, but all of them are cards I'd be happy to have in my deck that I don't think I will cut very often. The top 2 Black commons, though, I don't think I have any questions about. Number 2 is Falconwrath Noble. A 4-mana 2/2 flyer isn't awesome, but you could do worse. On top of that, he drains the opponent 1 life every time any creature dies. That's right, not just your creatures, any creatures. You don't need me to tell you that creatures die all the time in Magic just in the course of a game, but the Noble's ability gets even better thanks to all the sacrificing that is possible in Black. I would take the Noble pretty early, around picks 4 or 5. And the best Black common is, to no one's huge surprise, a premium removal spell. 4 mana instant speed, kill any non-artifact creature. There are basically, by the way, no artifact creatures in this format at common or uncommon other than Golem tokens and Spire Gargoyle, so that downside isn't as big as it seems. The additional text on the card sometimes will be a downside though. If you are playing against an opponent who is in black-red, for example, you may end up dumping some creatures with an earth into their graveyard and thus giving your opponent some value. Still, the upside is high enough that I'm willing to take Grizzly Spectacle with the first pick of a draft and be pretty happy about it. Now, what about Black's uncommons? Black looks pretty good there too, and I think of all the colors, Black has the highest average power level between its commons and uncommons. The third best Black uncommon is Entomber Exarch. Gravedigger has always been a good card in Limited, and that's basically what Entomber Exarch is, except that in some situations you can also use him to take a card away from your opponent's hand and get information. I think the first mode is the one that will be chosen most frequently, but both have their place and allow the Exarch to basically always be a 2-for-1. I would be happy to take an Exarch starting around pick 5. The 2 best Black uncommons are both cards that I would be thrilled to start my draft with. The second best Black uncommon for me is Seal of Doom. A 3-mana enchantment that you can sacrifice at any time to kill a non-black creature is pretty great. It does suffer from the fact that you can't really get your opponent with it the way you can with instant removal spells, since your opponent knows you have the seal in play, but it is still a very efficient removal spell that can kill almost anything, and as a result, I would be happy to first pick it. The best black uncommon is Vampire Nighthawk. Famous for being one of the best uncommons in any limited format ever, last time around, Vampire Nighthawk is still really good. A 3-mana 2/3 flyer with lifelink is already great. But on top of that, if you need him to, because of Death Touch, he can take one for the team and trade with anything, whether it's in the sky or on the ground. The Nighthawk won't be quite as crazy good as he was last time around, as there are more removal spells who can kill him, but he is the kind of card that just gives you so much value that you should almost never be passing it, and you should always be thrilled to see him in the pack you open. Green has a lot of really solid commons. The third best one is Penumbra Spider. A 4-mana 2/4 spider with reach is already something that gets played in a lot of limited formats, but this one comes with the amazing upside of making a black token version of itself when it dies. This is always good, as it makes it much harder for your opponent to clear the skies so they can attack, but it's even better in this format than usual thanks to Populate, which can allow you to make copies of the spider token. Don't take the spider in the very early going, but I'd be happy to start seeing these guys around pick 6 or so. At number 2, I have Arachnus Web. Green doesn't often get removal spells, but Arachnus Web is about all that Green could ask for. It makes a creature unable to attack or block, and it turns off their activated abilities, not in an irrelevant line of text in a set filled with creatures with nice abilities. It does have the downside of basically only working on creatures with 3 or less power, and because of that you don't usually want more than 2 of the web, but you can still put it on creatures with 4 or more power just to make them unable to block for a turn, so it at least does something. But because of the restrictions it has, I would be unhappy really to have more than 2 of them, but I would be happy to pick up the first one around pick 4 or so. What's more is there's a bit of a spider sub-theme in green, as you can see with these first 2 cards, and Arachnus Spider was also reprinted, and you can use him to search your library for Arachnus Web, so keep that in mind. The best green common, though, is Avacyn's Pilgrim. As always, 1-mana mana dorks are pretty great, and that's what we have here. Sure, he doesn't produce green mana, but that's okay. He lets you play your 3-drop on turn 2, 4-drop on turn 3, and so on, and that's what's important. You don't even have to be in white for the Pilgrim to be good, though it is an added bonus, in fact, that the Pilgrim can help you splash white. I would be very happy to start a draft with a first pick Pilgrim. Now let's look at Green's uncommons. Green has some pretty great uncommons too. I think the third best green uncommon is Gaia's Anthem. Anthem effects are always nice and limited, and that's true here too, especially because green is such a creature-based strategy. It does have the downside of being a pretty bad late-game top deck at times, but even then it will usually affect the board because you most likely have at least one creature in play. I'd be happy to take the Anthem as early as pick 4, and I think it's probably first pickable in a weak pack. And number 2, I have Baloth Cage Trap. Don't get a ton of ideas about casting this for 1 and a green on a regular basis. As I mentioned earlier, there aren't a ton of artifacts in this set, but there are signets at uncommon, so sometimes you will cast this thing for 2 mana, and that will be incredible. But even if you are casting this for 5, you have a 4/4 with Flash, basically, that will frequently eat an opponent's 3-power attacker, or at least provide you with an attacker your opponent hasn't accounted for in the race. What's more is Populate, as I've mentioned, is on a ton of cards, so you can make copies of this beast token. I'd be happy to take the trap around pick 3 or so. The best green uncommon is another Splicer, Vital Splicer. For 4 mana, it gives you a 1/1 body and a 3/3 golem that you can regenerate for a single colorless mana. That's a pretty great deal. I've also mentioned Populate enough in this video that you don't need me to remind you that you can also make copies of the golem with ease, and it's the kind of card you can splash into a blue-white deck that is abusing Enter the Battlefield abilities since his is so good. I would first pick Vital Splicer and be very happy. That does it for all the monocolored cards, but this set has a very strong multicolored theme, and while I don't want to talk about all of the common and uncommon gold cards in this video, if you want to see me do that, check out my archetype guide on my channel, which will be up later today, but I do want to talk about the ones that I think are first pickable. And those cards are, in no particular order really, Terminate, Putrefy, and Ground Assault. All of them are removal. Terminate and Putrefy are both so strong that I would take them basically over all the best monocolored commons or uncommons. They are just incredibly efficient removal spells. Ground Assault isn't quite as good, mostly because it's not an instant, but it is still something I know I'll find myself picking first in a mediocre pack. Its worst case scenario is that you pay 2 to do 2 damage to a creature, and it just scales up from there. It is clunky, as I mentioned, at sorcery speed, but it has enough upside to be considered first pickable for me. Well, that does it for the best commons and uncommons in Modern Masters for drafting purposes. In a few weeks, once Modern Masters 2017 gets on Magic Online, you will find a few draft videos of mine here on the Aether Hub of the format. I hope you find this video useful. If you did, click the like button. If you have any questions or want to share your own thoughts about the format, let me know in the comments below, and I will do my best to get back to you. And if you want to make sure you catch great MTG content from various MTG YouTubers, click subscribe. Thanks for watching.